So here we go. I said, for all you little entrepreneurs out there, today is the story of Courtside Cards. And if you're wondering what that is, well, I'm offended because I have no idea why a small business I created when I was 10 years old isn't something that you're aware of and is public knowledge to the world. So here we go. About when I was 10, maybe 9, I was really, really into basketball cards and loved basketball, everything about it. Michael Jordan was my hero, the Bulls, all that sort of stuff. And I really got into basketball cards. And that was really popular back then. Baseball cards were popular a little bit earlier, and basketball really picked up steam in the early 90s, mid 90s. And I was really into that, so I started getting basketball cards. Anytime we would go to the store, I'd beg my mom or dad to buy a pack of cards, whether it was Topps or Upper Deck or Ultra or whatever else, I can't remember. And I would also buy a pricing guide. I think it was Beckett was the name of the pricing guide that I would use most frequently. And I would buy them and collect them, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, I would put them on the wall with like little sticky putty, just probably ruining all these cards that could have been worth a decent amount of money. But I really had fun with it. And in my room, for anybody that knows me from long ago, Ryan, I'm talking to you, I used to have a wall, and I called it the Wall of Fame, and I would hang up these little cards of all of my favorite players, which was mostly just Michael Jordan and everybody else on the Bulls. But reason I'm telling you this is because at about 9 or 10, I had the idea of, hey, what if I could write a little article in the newspaper? And we had a tiny newspaper called the Norway Current, and I think it came out like once a month or twice a month. And it was a very small newspaper because at the time I lived in a 1 or 2 stoplight town. But it was something I wrote, and I can't even remember what I called the name of the article. But I basically would talk about the cards that were popular and the cards that were selling well and cards that weren't selling well. And I would use Beckett as sort of the Beckett pricing guide as like my resource, my research center, my Wikipedia, if you will. And if I look back, I think it was probably just straight plagiarism, but I had that entrepreneurial spirit, and I started writing an article in the paper, and it was fun, and I had fun doing it. My mom and dad would help me, but it kind of got me into doing something on my own, which I think was really cool that my parents encouraged me to that, and I had sort of some responsibility that was a really big deal to me. And then I decided to parlay that into doing what I could to buy and sell and trade the cards that I had. So once in a while I would go to card events. I can't remember what they were called, but you could go and buy and sell cards, card shows. There you go. And I would bring a little packet that I had all my good cards in, and I would go to these people that were usually middle-aged bearded men. Weird. You're looking at it if you're watching YouTube. That had these cases full of cards, and were in little plastic sleeves, and they had prices on them, and then they would sell packs of cards sometimes, and I would go there, and my dad would help me, and we would kind of haggle back and forth and negotiate a little bit. And I would think most of the time I probably wasn't coming out ahead, but a few times I remember making a couple of good deals and getting a couple of cards that I wanted and getting rid of cards that I didn't. And I sort of started to do that a little bit, and I thought, hey, this is kind of fun. So what's the next evolution of this that I could do? And by this time I was probably maybe 10 or 11. So my dad had a small building where he had his law office in, and it was a 2-story building. And on the first floor, it was kind of, it was occupied by some people, and then there were some spaces that were unoccupied and kind of like some basement rooms, if you will, that just sort of stored file cabinets or whatever. So kind of fixed up one of those areas, and I decided to have a little card shop that I would open up on Saturdays because my dad was there doing work. So he would go in and work for a couple of hours, and I would open up this little card shop from about 9 to 11, 9 to 12 every Saturday. And I would call it Courtside Cards. And I bought a couple of wooden cases that had like the plexiglass so I could store my cards in and display them nicely. They weren't just on the table. Also helped with theft. And I would take flyers that I would make, not on Canva because that didn't exist. So this was me drawing them and making a bunch of copies at my dad's office. And then he or my mom would drive me around our town and our neighboring towns. And I would ask all the local places of business if I could display it in their window or on their counter or whatever to let people know. And I would do this all the time. And it got to a point where I would be really religious about it. And it was every Saturday from 9 to 12. And I was open, and I would get traffic from people from a couple of towns over that were driving 15, 20 minutes, and even sometimes a little bit further. And I made this, painted this sign that would go out front, and I would nail it in the grass right by the road when I was open. And it was a bright red sign, and it said Courtside Cards. And to show you my artistic creativity, which knows no bounds, the O was actually a basketball. So chew on that, everybody, if you want to talk about being an artiste like I am. So did that, and then I started paying to attend and be a vendor at these different card shows. And normally I stuck kind of close to town, but sometimes I would go 40, 50, 60 miles outside of town with my parents' help. My dad would usually take me, and it was a couple hours, and it would pay $200, and usually I would make my money back and then some. But it turned out to be a pretty profitable business for me as a 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old kid. I did it for a couple of years, and I was making, sometimes on a Saturday, like I would clear $200 in cash, and then the stuff that I paid for, which was cards or whatever, and then I'd probably net out, well over $50 to $100 in most Saturdays. So for a kid trading basketball cards, making $50 minimum every Saturday at 10, 11, 12 years old, not bad. So that's the story, but boy, oh boy, do I have a lesson.